We've got to the point now where all of the lighted rockers are connected to the lighted rocker tabs interface, but before we put these boards back into the stop rail, this one board has got the transposer control and these other LEDs that we need to take care of before we put everything back together. So the transposer control, it's a 7-way switch, just a rotary switch, and if we flip the board over we can see it's quite tricky to get it in the right place so we don't get the reflections, but on the back of the switch here we've got these 2 rows of connections, and this pin number 4, if you count from the left, on both sides is connected together, and that's actually the common part of the switch, if you like, or the wiper, whatever you want to call it. So the way it works is that when you turn the switch, it connects this particular pin to these various other pins on these rows, and it's actually wired up, I just checked it earlier with a meter, such that position 1 goes to I think it's here, yeah, that's right, because you can see that comes round to this row of diodes here, and it's actually wired nicely, so it's pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So that's nice and easy. What I'm going to do then is going to remove these diodes from the board here. They're there because originally with the existing electronics this would have been part of a little diode matrix, but because there's only 7 connections or 7 positions, we don't need to care about that, and it actually fits quite nicely with our System One auxiliary board, because that's got 8 inputs that we can use. So that's what we're going to do with that. We'll connect this up to the auxiliary board, and these LEDs here, if we flip this over, one side of all the LEDs is connected to ground, which is here, and then the other side of each LED just comes back to these places here where these resistors used to be. We removed them in the previous part when we were looking at what we were going to do with this board and when we connected up the stops. So where these resistors were is where we're going to connect to these LEDs, and again that's just going to come back to the auxiliary functions board. So let's take a look at that board now. So here's our auxiliary functions board. I've got this connected to the main controller right now, and I've just connected a couple of LEDs across outputs number 1 and 2, and this is the ground wire which comes back from them. So we can see here that we've got up to 40 LED outputs that we can use, and we've also got 8 inputs which we can use up the side here if we move the wire out of the way. So these are what we're going to connect up to the transposer control that we just looked at, and we're going to use the first 7 or 6 or however many LEDs we had, outputs from this to drive those LEDs that we saw on that other board. So the way that this works, if I grab a little test lead here, so if I connect from 5 volts there to one of these outputs, or inputs rather, here, you'll see if you look at the computer screen that they just go on and off as I connect to them. So whenever you connect 5 volts to one of those inputs, you get a note on, and when you disconnect it you get a note off again. And then equally the other way round, if I just set this up to the right channel, if I send a note on there, then you can see that it lights LED number 1, so it's note 0 or note 1. If I send the next note, the next one lights, and when I release it, it goes out, and so on. So that's how we're going to control this thing. Pretty straightforward, hopefully. So what I'll do is wire this up now to that other board that we just looked at, and we'll take a look at things after that's done. Okay, so I've connected up the auxiliary board now, as we just said. So we've got these 7 outputs from this switch and the common. So the common is the one connected up to plus volts here. These 7 connect to our inputs along here, and then the LED outputs, they connect across here. So if we flip this over now, and if we plug it into the main control board and look at the computer, you'll see that as soon as we plug it in, we get a note on note number 0 on channel 10, and we see the MIDI for that. And the reason is that this switch has to be in some position, and at the moment it's in position 0, which sends a note 0. So you'll see as we advance the switch, note 0 goes off, note 1 comes on, and then 1 goes off, 2 comes on, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And that's basically how that bit of it works. And you can see that we've got the MIDI that follows that as well. And then for these LEDs here, if we send a note 1 to the auxiliary board, the first LED lights up, and then we can do 2, 3, 4 and 5, that's those, and then 6 is the yellow one. So that's all working now. The next bit we've got to worry about, well actually not the next bit, probably the last bit that we'll worry about, is just connecting up these slider controls, and they're pretty easy. On the back, all of their connections come out to this connector here, which I think we discussed previously. So what I'm going to do now is put all of these boards back into the actual stop rail, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next part. These sliders, I'll probably wire those up last. I think the next thing to do after this is going to be to look at the pistons and get those wired up. So that's the next thing that we'll do. This takes care of the stop rail.